Welcome back, everyone. This is Pastor Howie Maxson, and I am continuing our readings and thoughts from the scriptures. Those of you who watch this daily on Facebook, I've been absent the past few days, just winter storm issues and early morning appointments. But we're back. We're in the last two chapters of the book of Acts. And in this video, we'll be looking at Acts 27, 1 through 12, where the Apostle Paul, having been basically the target of a mob in Jerusalem, detained by the Roman guards, discovered to be a Roman citizen freeborn, and therefore became protected by the Roman guards, having a plot rise up against him to ambush the guards and kill him on his way to being once again interviewed in Jerusalem, and therefore rescued from that, he is sent to Caesarea, where he is tried and kept in custody, but free custody, for 2 years under Governor Felix, who was then succeeded by Governor Festus, who involves King Agrippa, and all these trials ultimately result in Paul now being committed to and under guard of Roman centurions to be taken to Rome to appear before Caesar. So chapter 27, at least verses 1 through 12, is the beginning of that voyage. And once again, we'll notice that Luke, who wrote this historical book, as well as his gospel, the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts written by Luke, is present again, because we see that personal pronoun we, and we know that Luke accompanied Paul on this journey. Most likely he stayed with Paul in Rome for a while and was able to compile this history and the history of Christ during that time. We don't know exactly when Luke wrote, but it seems plausible. So let's look at these first 12 verses of Acts chapter 27. Paul sails for Rome. When it was decided that we, see, Luke is including himself, that we would sail for Italy, Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. So this is sounds to me like a important and well-known regiment of Roman centurions. We boarded a ship from Adramyttium. I don't know where that is. It doesn't matter, but it's a ship from probably someplace in the Adriatic Sea, about to sail for ports along the coast of the province of Asia. And we put out to sea, Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was with us. So Luke, Aristarchus, a disciple from Greece, basically, Thessalonica, is also accompanying Paul. The next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends so they might provide for his needs. So he still has freedom. He's not a prisoner in the sense of being in chains at this point. From there we put out to sea again and passed to the lee of Cyprus, which is the island closest to the Middle East from in the Mediterranean, because the winds were against us. When we had sailed across the open sea off the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra in Lycia. There the centurion found an Alexandrian ship, Alexandrian meaning from Alexandria, Egypt, sailing for Italy, and put us on board. We made slow headway for many days and had difficulty arriving. So they're sailing from the Middle East, and they're sailing against the prevailing winds, which come out of the west. So they've had some difficulty with sailing. Made slow headway. Had difficulty arriving off Cnidus. When the wind did not allow us to hold our course, we sailed to the lee of Crete. Lee means the side of the island that is behind the wind, whereas the head of Crete would be where the wind is striking first. So Luke's knowledgeable about these maritime things. So we sailed to the lee of Crete, opposite Salmon. We moved along the coast with difficulty and came to a place called Fair Havens, near the town of Lasea. Much time had been lost, and sailing had already become dangerous because now it was after the Day of Atonement. The Day of the Atonement in the Jewish calendar is in what basically we would call late September, early October. Shifts a little bit from year to year. So it's in the fall. And so fall weather is going to impact the Mediterranean Sea just like it does every place in the northern hemisphere of our planet. And so there has to be a decision made. So Paul warned them, the end of verse 9, "Men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to ship and cargo and to our own lives also." He wasn't a sailor, but Paul sailed quite a bit in his journeys, his 3 missionary journeys, and even before that, he was from Tarsus, and he probably sailed to Tarsus, his hometown, more than once. Sailing was much easier. It wasn't and quicker than traveling by foot or even by caravan of some sort. So he was familiar. He was familiar with the Mediterranean. He was familiar with the seasons, and he was familiar with God. And so he is warning them, this may be a disastrous voyage if we continue. But verse 11 tells us, the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul said, followed the advice of the pilot and of the owner of the ship. Down through history, there's been so many people who captain ships who have done unwise things. One very prominent historic case being the captain of the Titanic. And they should not have sailed. They should not have tried to, in the pride of the construction of this unsinkable ship, they should not have tried to make record-breaking speeds across the Atlantic. But history is the judge of all, and history says that mistakes were made and many people's lives were lost. And this is what Paul was afraid of himself. But the pilot and the owner of the ship said, let's go. Since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, that was a factor, I'm sure, the majority decided that we should sail on, hoping to reach Phoenix, not Phoenix, Arizona, by the way, and winter there. This was a harbor in Crete facing both southwest and northwest. So it was a harbor that was essentially isolated. It was kind of shaped in a nice crescent with a probably narrow entranceway and shielded from the wind and the storms. So this is where we stop for this video, but the saga continues and it gets dramatic, and it would probably make a pretty cool action movie if we looked at it. But all in all, what action movies don't portray, in which sometimes in our lives we don't see, the hand of God is directing Paul to be a witness to the capital city of the Roman Empire. And he will get there, and we will see that progress in our next video, our next edition of Readings and Thoughts from the Scriptures. Until then, God bless you, and if you're traveling, it's winter time, and travel safely, and use wisdom. Don't be like the captain of the ship and the majority of the land-based soldiers and try to do things in bad weather, that we should just stay home and read the book of Acts instead. Anyway, God bless your day.